Today I'm going to do a commentary, side-by-side commentary on the Pixel 7 Pro and Huawei P40 Pro image comparison. So today we are going to take a look at the daytime and nighttime comparison for both phones. At night you have sample from the normal mode and then the night mode. One thing that I like to note before we start is that the Huawei periscope sensor utilize actually using 125 millimeter sensor or periscope sensor, which means it is actually 5.4x zoom instead of 5x zoom like the Pixel. So the Pixel here is pure 5x optical zoom, or has a stationary 5x optical zoom because it is using a 117 millimeter lens, while the Huawei uses a 125 millimeter lens. So it does technically zoom a little zoom in. It is so technically making it in pure like a so its actual calculation is 5.4x. So if you see this image comparison a little zoom in, it is because of the Huawei is using a much more zoom in lens. That's number one. Number two, I judge this image without like I'm not a photography expert. I'm just an amateur, somewhat a person that really likes taking images. So whatever I say, or like my opinion here is my own opinions, but I do go over the technicality, like the cleanness of this image, the detailed production and dynamic range and so on. Number three, the Pixel has that tendency to like make the image pale or more like slightly dull. Even before I start the clip, I will show you the image of the Pixel purposely rendering the image like very dull, and then you can see like clearly what I meant with when I see like what I meant by the Pixel tends to make its images, like the Pixel 7 Pro tends to make its images dull. Yes. So even when the photos itself, or like from the lens, like if you take from the lens, like even in real life, the photos is more colorful. The Pixel is going to process it and then render it to be a much more dull than it is. So it's going to have that aggressive dynamic range and dull photos. So without further ado, starting off my comparison with images from main sensor. This one is from the Pixel and this one is from the Huawei. Now for the Huawei, I forget to turn off the master AI. So the image is naturally gonna come, will be produced as more vibrant and saturated. Now for me, I will choose the one with most pleasant image. So I'm gonna go with this Huawei image, because if we were to take a look at this Pixel image, it's like I was taking it at a very late evening, even though the day is actually a very bright sunny evening instead of near sunset. Anyways, I have to praise the Pixel color reproduction, because the color of this purple flower here is more correct than this one. But then again, if I were to show these images to someone, I would pick the Huawei's photos. So this is one more main sensor image comparison. That one is from the Pixel and this one is from the Huawei. Again, the Pixel always have that darker exposure and cool temperature or cool white balance. But then again, the color of this flower here is accurate, but the color of the leaves and overall vibe is not that accurate. Now, as for the Huawei, the color of the leaves is also not accurate, but at least it does capture the vibrancy or the vibes of that sunny, bright evening. Another 2x zoom shot from main sensor. This one was taken with the Pixel and this one was taken with the Huawei. Now, one thing before I start is that I have Master AI enabled here, so the whole color reproduction for Huawei's images is like going to be really off. So yeah, the color reproduction for the Huawei is really off. Like the color of the flower here is like too vibrant. Like this is not the proper color reproduction or rendition of that situation. The Pixel did a better job at replicating the flower color, but I think it needs a more purple, but this is a little blue, at least for me. There is some purplish, but yeah, the flower is in reality a little bit more purple, but not this purple, still purple. And the whole leaves, I feel like has better like details, like came with like was like rendered with a lot more details compared to Huawei. So for these photos, I would pick the Pixel as the winner because of how it rendered the color of this flower a little bit more correctly than the Huawei that is exaggerating everything. Main sensor. Now this image we're also meant to test the dynamic range capabilities of these smartphones. So again, this was taken with the Pixel and this was taken with the Huawei. Now, if one thing you should notice right away is that the Huawei is always going to be consistent at favoring the cooler white balance, and its ability to control the cloud exposure is not that good. And it also seems to introduce a lot of fringing or blooming effects around this roof, and it also fails to maintain the details of these ridges on the roof. While the Pixel can control the cloud exposure a lot better and maintain the details on these ridges a lot better, and seems to control that blooming or fringing effect. Now, the color rendition of the sky is quite accurate, but the overall photos is darker. And before I forget, the pixel also seems to be affected by blue or cooler white balance, as this white pillar here has taken a slightly bluish tone. But compared to Huawei, the Google Pixel does do a lot better. Just the exposure is a little dark. Now, for the winner to this between these two images, I would pick the Pixel because of how it renders the cloud color more accurately. Looking at the standard focal length for the main sensor, that one was taken on the Pixel, and this one was taken with the Huawei. Now, this is where the Pixel starts to bounce back by representing the image more accurately. It is, after all, a very sunny evening, while the Huawei seems to favor cooler tone again. But one thing you should notice here is that the Huawei is now able to represent or reproduce the color of the sky accurately compared to the picture earlier. And I should note that even though the timing difference, the timing or the timestamp looks different, this photo was actually taken within a few second gaps. It's not within a few minute gaps. Anyways, the Huawei did favor the more cooler white balance, and then the details is missing, as you can see. You can't really see my tuxedo cat black fur that well, but on the Pixel you can see my tuxedo cat black fur much better, and the exposure is a lot better. But the sky here is being masked by the algorithm, while the Huawei is able to control the exposure better. As for the color reproduction, the color of this wall in the pixel is correct, so does the color of this white pillar. So yeah, in this case, I pick the Google Pixel as the winner because it is able to represent the situation a lot better than the Huawei. But I do praise the Huawei for its ability to expose the cloud better. So it is an algorithm problem, because earlier you have two images that looks too blue, but now the bluish tone is slightly been reduced, and then the sky is being exposed properly. So I hope that on a newer Huawei did fix this issue on the newer phones or newer software. So another 5x zoom shot comparison. This one is the Pixel and this one is from the Huawei. Now, between these two, I have to say that the Pixel here did portray the situation more accurately when compared to the Huawei. But then again, you have to remember that the Huawei is with Master AI enabled, so it will boost all the image, like the saturation and the color is going to pop a lot more than it should be. But here you can see that the Huawei cloudy problem is gone, but it's not gone forever. So the problem with the cloudiness or fade filter is depending on the lighting. Now, since I've already picked the Pixel as a winner, other than its ability to reproduce this image correctly, I also have to praise its dynamic range that is able to bring this part of the images better. But the Huawei P40 Pro is keeping it dark. Now, for artistic rendition, people would love Huawei, but I feel like I like the practicality that the Pixel 7 Pro gave here. Now, in terms of the detail, I would say that both had the same amount of detail. But then again, you have to remember that the Huawei does have tendency to use its AI to over sharpen the image. But in this case, I feel like both the quality of both 5x zoom shot is on par with each other. Moving on, here comes the zoom shot. Now, this one is from the Pixel and this one is from the Huawei. Now, for Huawei, the native zoom or the native optical zoom for the periscope sensor is actually 5.4x instead of 5x, because the native focal length for the Huawei is 125 millimeter. So if you were to divide it by 23, you will get 5.4, and it does show in the image. So then again, this means that Huawei is giving more zoom because the zoom actually starts at 5.4x. Now, coming back to the color, as you can see here, the Pixel tends to be more muted. Like in this Huawei, you can see the sliver of the sunlight hitting the grass, but here the whole image feels muted. Like the color are just off and pale. Now, one thing that is going to be consistent with the Huawei periscope sensor is that it's always going to have this clouding effects on all of its photos, at least on its periscope sensor photos. Now, this is a hardware problem. It will appear in both photos and videos. So as for photos, the Huawei does include a demisting feature on their gallery app. So you can use the demist to kind of like fix the image or like to remove the cloudy or fade filter. But doing so will cause the picture to be extra saturated. Now, because I took this image with Master AI, I don't know if this saturated image is actually because of the Master AI or because of the demisting picture or the demisting effects in the gallery app doing it. So for this case, I'm going to take this image here from Huawei as it is. But yes, you can fix this image if you have a better photo editing app. But as of now, I would say that the Huawei does produce correct color, especially with the green. And for the Pixel, I have to praise it for its ability to control the noise that is in the background of this photo. As you can see, the Huawei hit it with its cloudiness. But if we were to zoom in, you can actually see the noise in this picture. So between these two photos, I will go with Huawei because of its more accurate or pleasant image or pleasant representation of the image. While I don't think the Pixel is bad, it can be fixed in the editing app, but for the use straight out of the camera use, I would always pick this picture. Another zoom shot, but this time it is on 10x. Now this one is on Pixel and this one is on Huawei. Now, if you take a look at these images, you'll see that the Pixel did really bounce back from its failure. Now, if we take a look at the Huawei's photo, you can see that the blue from the sky is affecting the whole image, but it is more obvious here, here, and here. As for Huawei, it does represent the color of the sky correctly. And not only that, it does have better dynamic range, that it is able to like show what's underneath there. But as on Huawei, you can barely see anything, also a lot of the noise. Another thing when it comes to the details is that this part here is almost smudged. There is like no details unless you start to zoom in. While on the Pixel, there's detail here even when not zooming in. But if you were to zoom in, you can see the tiles more clearly. And another point for the dynamic range and details on the Pixel is that the Pixel able to expose this part of the image. Like on the Huawei, you can't see these stains on the water tank. Like you can barely see it, and also the Huawei failed to kind of like render this part of the 10x zoom shot. So in that this part here, it starts to look like a water or like oil painting. And I don't know if you notice it or not, but there's also some blooming or fringing affecting the image. While on the Pixel, it managed to like render this part better and also brings up the shadow and also reduce the blooming, like almost no, I feel like there's no blooming or fringing affecting this part of the image. So yeah, for this picture, I will give the win to the Pixel because number one, it represents the color of the sky better. It represents the sunny evening light better, and the dynamic range here and here and the rendition of the details here and here is just better than Huawei. Another 5x zoom shot. This one is on the Pixel and this one is on the Huawei. Now, between these two images, I would pick the Huawei as the winner because it is not that aggressive at controlling the light and it is able to represent the vibes or the situation better. Because again, this is a very sunny evening, while the Pixel controls the light to the point that you barely notice there be sunlight hitting this part of the tree here. So, and then if you notice, this is also where the cloudiness look or like that faded look, faded filters start to show up again. Now, if we were to use the editing tools to fix this, the image is going to start to look like the Pixel photos a little bit, but it still allows the sunlight in the background, like there to show, like allows it to be there instead of just completely removing it. But in this case, that cloudiness or faded look really helps the Huawei. Now, in terms of the quality of this image, I would like to remind you again that the Huawei tends to over sharpen the image. So if we were to take a look here, you would notice that the Huawei seems to be sharper, but I promise you this is nothing more than over sharpening the image. So the Pixel here is more organic and a tad cleaner, while there is some smudges here in this area. But yeah, Again, I would pick the Huawei as the winner for these two shots. Taken at their standard focal length. This one is from the Pixel and this one is from the Huawei. Now, if one thing you should note right away, or you should see right away, is that the Huawei seems to favor the cooler white balance once more. And I feel like this is the algorithm's attempt to like create that artistic shot where it brings forth the subject of this photos, that is this hibiscus flower, forth and then push everything else into the background. While the Pixel expose everything in much more balanced light. The HDR is a lot more aggressive and it does represent that evening sunny day a lot better. And one thing to note is that it even control the highlight of the sun hitting the left petal or the right petal of this hibiscus flower, while the Huawei allows that sunlight, like maintain that sunlight hitting the flower. Now, between these two, I definitely would pick the Pixel because it represents the image, or it represents the situation better compared to Huawei, and you can also get the same artistic result on an editing apps. So you're not going to lose much with the Pixel. Well, the Huawei, I do think you can bring the white balance, like bring back some of the shadows, like lift up some of the shadows, but then again, you can't get as practical as this. So in terms of accurate representation and practicality, the Pixel is my choice, is the winner for this set of images. Another 2x zoom shot. This one was taken with the Pixel and this one was taken with the Huawei. Now, this is where things get a little bit tricky. So, or like, this is when the Pixel decided to go for the cooler white balance while the Huawei decided to go for that warm white balance. So this is a lot different, like, decided like, maybe I want to go to the cooler white balance. Anyways, when it comes to the accuracy of that, like what image represent that situation the best, I definitely would say that the Huawei did a good job at representing that image and more accurate to real life. Because if we look at this flower and then the shot of the flower before this, the Huawei really did a better job. Now, the color of the leaves may be slightly inaccurate because this is how the color of the leaf should look like this in this color, not this deep green or this light green. So this one is like too vibrant, but the color of the flower is more correct on the Huawei. Now another thing that I want to point out is that the focus is not like the Huawei main sensor is not really focusing on this flower that well, or maybe it's just that the algorithm decided not to like enhance or like maintain details the same way it did with the roof shot or like that dynamic range that I just showed you. So the Huawei did not try to maintain any detail as the center of this image is like a tad blurry, while the Pixel really did a better job at like maintaining the detail or like keeping the center of this image, the center of this hibiscus flower more in focus. So in terms of the blur and everything, I think I kind of like the Pixel more because of that these little orbs. I'm not sure what they were called, but yeah, like these little orbs really kind of like give that image a vibe. But if I were to pick an image as a winner, I would go with the Huawei because of how it portrays that sunny evening more accurately. Now we're looking at the sets of images taken with the ultra-wide sensor. This one is from the Pixel and this one is from the Huawei. Now, one thing I want to point out is that all Huawei P40 Pro's sensor, from ultra-wide, main to periscope sensors, all of them are utilizing RYP sensor, which technically allows them to use to absorb more light, but also reproduce some of these images with a much more warmer tone. So in this ultra-wide image, you can see that warm tone affecting the image, but in some cases, like the Huawei do really have that tendency to go with the cooler white balance. But in this case, in this ultra wide sensor image, you can see that the Huawei really has that warm tone. So if you're wondering why this image, like why there's like glaring, like there's sunlight glaring, so the truth is the Pixel has wider field of view. It is, if I remember correctly, it is a 12 or 13 millimeter sensor compared to Huawei's 18 millimeter sensor. So yeah, the Huawei is not that wide when compared to Pixel. If I'm not mistaken, the Pixel has 125-degree field of view, while the Huawei only has about 94 or 95 degree of field of view. But so yeah, like I tried to get the framing, but maybe because I thought that the algorithm might control this light flaring, just like what it did with the Pixel images. So another thing is that the Pixel does render the color of the sky more correctly. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, this is a sunny evening, so the sky is supposed to look like that, while the Huawei has that more pale rendition. Now, as for the color of the images, as for the leaves, color of the leaves accuracy, I feel like the Huawei did a better job at rendering the color, uh, because the Pixel tends to like have this darker, like not so correct rendition of that image. For the flower, I think the Huawei might did it better, but I'm not sure. But so in this case, I can't pick a winner because the Pixel is not able to like produce the color of the leaves accurately, but it did render the sky better, while the Huawei is able to render the color of the leaves and the flowers, the hibiscus flowers, more correctly, but the sky is a little bit failure. So I feel like this is a matter of taste, whether which one you like the most, the Pixel or the Huawei. So this one, the choice or the winner for this one is yours. So let me know what you pick as a winner, because for me, I'm not sure which one to pick as winner. Also from the ultra wide, this one is from Pixel and this one is from the Huawei. Now, if we were to take a look at this side by side and switch it back and forth, you can see that the ultra wide sensor is not that wide. Now, some of the articles suggest that the ultra wide sensor, the Huawei's ultra wide sensor field of view is 120 degree, but for me, I don't think it makes sense. I think the most logical ultra wide degree from Huawei's ultra wide sensor is actually somewhere between 94 to 100 degree field of view, because if you look at this, it's like so much not so wide. Now, like when the Huawei first came out with this 18 millimeter sensor, they always like praising it, like, but then again, in reality, one better sensor and then the other are like shitty is not a good thing. Like the other sensor is like not that good and not worthy of a flagship phone. Like if you were to take a look at my video test, especially at nighttime video test, you can see how bad the main camera is on the Huawei P40 Pro. Like it's so it starts to fall apart really quickly. So it doesn't really hold like the same amount of prestige as the ultra wide sensor of this Huawei. And also, if you say the Huawei's ultra wide sensor is better in daytime, I don't think so, because when I tested it and I watched it side by side, I noticed that the Huawei's ultra wide sensor has that warping or jello effect because of its EIS. So it's not like the best, and then I like the way it exposes the ground a lot more, while the Pixel has better control over the dynamic range, but it also tends to make things over sharpened and very contrasty, which I don't like. And then there's also this snowy like staticky artifact or like noises in the darker part of the Pixel ultra wide sensor videos. So both are not great, but then again, when it comes to trading blows, I feel like the Pixel tends to has better like outcomes if you can ignore that static or if you're like willing to crop in more. So I was hoping that in the future, smartphone manufacturer can also utilize that sensor crop. Hopefully they can. This is a very hopeful thought, that they can utilize that same high megapixel sensor crop to like give you a more lossless ultra wide images from the ultra wide, like when you zoom in, like from 0.5 to 0.6 to 0.7 and until to 1x, like to give you really that lossless zoom in experience. Now, as for the zoom in between Huawei and the Pixel, the Huawei is actually comes with 0.7 crop factor. So even though when you zoom out, you can see like 0.7 crop factor, it's actually not correct. It is in reality is 0.7, not 0.6, because how incorrect. So it is like like try to like throw you off, because it doesn't make sense. In calculation, it is 0.7. As for the Pixel, it is 0.5, but the Pixel also does that ultra wide fish eye lens correction thing. So you're gonna get a little bit less, but then again, you're gonna get a much more smoothed out photo, like remove all that lens distortion. So your photo is gonna come out a little bit narrower than 125, if I'm not mistaken. But then again, in terms of ultra wide, I prefer more traditional ultra wide that is wide. Wide, like 12 millimeter or 13 millimeter, because that's just like you like hopefully can improve, because what Huawei was offering is not it. Like while the ultra wide is good, the rest of the sensors are just in the trash. So anyways, back to this image, I feel like the Huawei did a better rendition. Like it exposes this foreground a lot better, but also introducing this blooming effect also on the clouds. For the Pixel, it does reproduce a good color, like a proper or accurate representation of that situation. The sky is supposed to be this blue, while the Huawei tends to like get a paler. So this is proof that the Huawei can render the sky correctly if it wants to, but it's oftentimes it has tendency to go with that cooler tones instead of this more correct, albeit pale representation of the sky. Anyways, for this, I don't think I can pick a winner, because this is a matter of taste. I'm pretty sure you can edit lift up the shadow a little bit more with the Pixel, but and you might be able to like control the highlights in editing app with these two, but I'm not sure which one to pick as a winner. I feel like in terms of this flower, the hibiscus flower color reproduction, I feel like the Pixel did a better job. But then again, this is also a matter of taste. So I'm not going to pick a winner similar to this picture. It is up to you to pick a winner. So I'm not going to pick a winner in this one. I'm just going to say that I prefer the ultra wide of the Pixel. And I used to use the Realme 6 Pro as my daily driver, and it also has like ultra wide sensor. So I'm always going to have bias to like traditional or like more mainstream size, like focal length sensor. Like 12 to 13 millimeter is like a good amount of ultra wide instead of this not so wide ultra sensor, like image from ultra sensor. So I feel like I feel like smartphone manufacturers should find a way to like utilize hopefully in the future utilize that huge megapixel count and utilize sensor crop to get that lossless zoom, like lossless zoom from 0.5 to 1x. So as I mentioned before, I'm not going to pick a winner for this sets of images. It's up to you. Now we're going to look at the sets of images taken with the ultra-wide sensor. This one is from the Pixel and this one is from the Huawei. So this test was supposed to test the dynamic range, and as we can see, the Huawei here is like overblowing the image and failed to control the exposure here. Like it's just blown out. Even the color of the leaves here is just like too bright, while the Pixel controlled everything more correctly, even this part here. But if you were to ask me, I feel like the color of this wall here is not correct because it's supposed to be a little more pale, but yeah, pale like this one. So but then again, the way Pixel rendered this image, it's a lot better and also a lot wider. I like it. So other than the wrong color rendition of this wall, I'm gonna give this win to the Pixel just because how it produced the whole image, how it rendered it more properly and more pleasing compared to this overblown image. And now we're going to look at another dynamic range sample. This that was taken with the ultra-wide sensor. So this one was taken with the Pixel 7 Pro, and this one was taken with the Huawei. Now, if one thing you should notice right away is that the Pixel algorithm, HDR algorithm, is more aggressive, and it did a better job at controlling the sky area, while the Huawei is just not doing. It's like a little tamer. If we were to take a look at this part of the images, the Pixel really did a better job at like properly exposing the image. But if we were to take a look at this water tank tower, you can see kind of how the Pixel attempt to like fix its lens distortion when went bad or like failed to do its job. So it's kind of, this water tanks look weird or wobbly. As for the Pixel, it still kind of look weird, but it's much more straight line. Like yeah, it's not that wobbly or like weird architect design or whatever you call it. So for this image, I would give the win to the Pixel because of how it exposes, like how it how well balanced the exposure is for the entire image. But in terms of color reproduction, I feel like the Huawei gets it better. The rooftop is supposed to look like this instead of this because this one is like too vibrant. The red color here is a little bit off. Other than that, I think I'm going to go with the Pixel. This one, like I take it back. Like the Pixel managed to like get the color of the leaves here in this area more correctly. So yeah, the winner is going to the Pixel for this image. Another dynamic range sample, now taken with the main sensor. So this one is from the Pixel and this one is from the Huawei. Now, one thing I should know before talking into more details that my focus for this image is this pole, so like the center of this image. But the Huawei, I don't know what's going on with the Pixel because it allows everything to be in focus. Like I don't know where it locked in the focus because it's not as, because the photos on from the Pixel is not as blurry as the Huawei. So yeah, in terms of focus, they get where I want it, like here, like on this pole. But yeah, but the Pixel seems to be doing a good job. So I'm not sure what really is going on here. Anyways, the Pixel is doing a better job at controlling like or exposing the whole image. Yeah, but then again, I can't really judge this image that on that like strict measurement because the Huawei has it background blurred and focus on this pole, while the Pixel, I just don't know where the focus goes. So yeah. Now, as for the color accuracy, I feel like the Pixel did a good job at rendering the whole color green, and even here the water tank tower is more accurate because how the sun is hitting the so like how the sun is directly going to the water tank tower. So yeah, definitely goes to the Pixel because how well it controls the exposure. While the Huawei does a better job at focusing things, but then again, yeah, the Pixel did win in this case.